The awareness of office workers in the theatricality of emotional labor and terminology inflation on the real stage. 1. The performance on stage, what lies behind the scenes. Going to work is like stepping onto a stage. This is not a mere metaphor. The office is a space where the boundaries between the front stage, public performance, and backstage, private preparation, are blurred. The moment we open the office door and assume the role of an office worker, we must put aside our natural emotions, beginning a performance of keeping a good expression, maintaining logical speech, and appearing professional. This act is not simply pretense, it is a skill for survival. Sociologist Irving Goffman, through his metaphor of everyday life as a stage, explained how humans perform social roles to meet the expectations of their audience. But what is the essence of this performance? 2. The limitations of emotional labor performance and inner conflict. Emotional labor is not simply about managing Oni-Euro-S expressions. Arlie Hochschild defined emotional labor as managing emotions, expressions, and attitudes for payment, akin to performing a function in a contract. Colleagues and clients are not spectators of our feelings, they only care about tangible results. In this process, office workers must suppress their natural emotions and deliver performances tailored to audience expectations. However, this continuous act leads to emotional exhaustion. Emotional labor is not just a psychological burden, it is a systematic suppression of genuine feelings. 3. Inflation of terminology, the hollow resonance of language. Modern office culture is obsessed with subs rather than the content of the performance. In service planning, the value is demonstrated through the terminology itself. A screen definition document becomes a PRD, a planning document becomes a product narrative, and meetings become syncs. This inflation of terminology creates empty language, diluting true value. While the essence of the product delivered to clients remains largely unchanged, internal responsibility blurs, and meaningless arguments intensify. This is not just a change in language, but part of a systematic attempt to hide reality. 4. Denial of sensations, obscuration of reality perception. In Buddhist philosophy, perception is not merely sensory awareness but the source of mental contamination. Desires for forms, sounds, smells, tastes, sensations, and thoughts are defined as defilements that pollute the mind. This concept clarifies how terminology inflation and emotional labor in the workplace lead to distorted senses. Office workers pursue results, yet focus more on superficial expressions than on intrinsic value. This process leads to a loss of mental clarity. Emotional labor results in emotional numbness, and terminology inflation deepens the confusion of reality awareness. 5. The chain reaction of performance, the isolation of planners. The 7-year experience of a planner within a company illustrates the chain reaction of performance. The illusion of gaining trust through deliverables collapses into fragmented storyboards, while jargon like imaginate dilutes responsibility. Phrases such as, "This is a concept," "the details will align during development," inevitably lead to project delays and product failures. In this process, the planner loses half of their performance due to a single developer's remark and undermines the product through reasonable compromises. Becoming a minority in the department and a target of behind-the-scenes gossip is the consequence of a failed performance. 6. The hollow ownership, living without authority but with responsibility. Companies demand leadership, ownership, and impact, yet authority remains absent and decision-making power rests with higher-ups. This reflects the emptiness of ownership, leaving only mental burdens. The term alignment is just an elegant packaging for the idea of don't oppose, just conform. Office workers are trapped in the contradiction of being held responsible without authority and being expected to make an impact without decision-making power. This is an extreme form of emotional labor, leading to mental isolation and loss of self-esteem. 7. Attempts to escape the bud of personal branding versus reality. Attempts to escape manifest in blogs, YouTube, and personal branding. However, the stamina required for consistency is first drained by the company. Views erode self-esteem, and thoughts become meaningless as anyone can say those things. In this process, office workers face a sense of limit loss. Trapped in a middle state without company recognition and lacking market validation externally, where does one belong? This is an identity crisis that transcends the limitations of performance. 8. The cry behind the stage: philosophical awareness for restoring authenticity. Crying on stage is forbidden. The audience remains unmoved and only delivers judgments of unprofessionalism. But behind the stage, tears are free. As Goffman's metaphor suggests, the front stage is a space to persuade the audience, while the backstage is for preparing for the next performance. The issue lies in many office workers being forced to perform on the front stage without access to a backstage. This leads to distorted expressions and deepened emotional isolation. True performance does not stem from company-approved jargon but from values customers truly perceive. 9. The obsolescence of terms: the collapse of meaningless language. The more intense the inflation of terminology, the more genuine abilities emerge in rustic, concrete forms. Everyone writes a PRD, but not everyone can create a decision-making document. Everyone claims to be data-driven, yet no one commits to the next actionable step. This is an example of how hollow language reflects the meaninglessness of reality. True ability is not captured by terms, but by concrete problem-solving. 10. Awareness and escape: philosophical overcoming of emotional labor. Buddhism points out that fixation on sensuality ruins mental clarity. This suggests that emotional labor and denial of senses in the office world are the sources of spiritual pollution. To break away from the continuity of performance, one must become aware of the structures of emotional labor and terminology inflation. This is not just a practical change but a philosophical shift in attitude. The idea that one must not cry on stage implies that real ability is not based on suppression but on the reality's concreteness. 11. Practical insights: realistic awareness strategies for office workers. Re-establishing concrete value: focus on solving concrete problems, even within the inflation of terminology. Eliminate vague language by practicing the creation of decision-making documents. Organizing emotional labor instead of suppressing emotions. Create a backstage for emotional preparation. Systematize emotional labor through daily emotional records and self-analysis. Deconstructing terminology: reflect on the terms used within the company and examine whether they truly reflect real value. The courageous choice to avoid meaningless language is necessary. Redefining personal branding instead of branding that erodes self-esteem. Practice blogging or YouTube for authentic self-expression. Prioritize sincerity over consistency. Balancing authority and responsibility: move beyond the company's demand for ownership and seek a balance between personal authority and responsibility. Cultivate an attitude centered on cooperation rather than alignment. 12. Restoring authenticity within performance. The workplace is a stage, but crying behind the scenes is free. Recognizing the systems of emotional labor and terminology inflation, and concretizing true value are essential tasks for modern office workers. Buddhism's caution against sensuality and Goffman's stage theory reveal the sensory pollution of modern society and showcase what true performance entails. Finding authenticity within performance is the beginning of a realistic awareness for office workers. This article, based on insights from 2 texts, philosophically and practically analyzes the reality of office workers. By highlighting the essence of emotional labor and the meaninglessness of terminology inflation, it concretizes the value of true performance. Through this, office workers can escape the performance on stage and reclaim the concreteness and authenticity of